We're going to look at immunity, in particular, immunity in the sense of acute disease. Acute disease is you get sick with the flu, a cold, something along that line through the process of infection. That requires a very small organism known as a microorganism, and it is going to cause a very predictable course if you are exposed to it and you are susceptible and it enters your body. It takes, for a person to get ill, it takes the agent, which is the pathogen, and some pathogens are more virulent, more easily transferred than others. It also takes a host, a person that is either susceptible because of lifestyle choices, genetically susceptible, or maybe a person that's not eating well, getting enough sleep, doesn't have good hygiene. And then the environment, which means that you have the conditions right for the transfer. And that might be associated with being in close proximity to someone, sharing glasses to drink from, doorknobs, something that's on a doorknob. I'm thinking of a cold, and also accessibility or available to healthcare. The disease follows a very predictive process. Red is the number of pathogens that can be assessed, usually in the blood. The blue line is the severity of symptoms. And you'll see that when someone is first exposed, which is in the incubation period, the start of the incubation period, that there are no symptoms. However, the number of organisms is increasing. Then there's a very dramatic increase of symptoms and organisms. The prodromal is when somebody feels yucky. Ugh, right? You just don't know. I feel like something's coming on, but I don't know if it's just I don't feel well or if I need some more sleep or what it is. When you're ill, it is when you have outright symptoms of the disease or the symptoms, sneezing, coughing, sore throat, etc. That's the period of illness, and you'll see that the symptoms increase dramatically. And as you get to the peak of your illness, the organisms quickly decline. The period of decline, you start to feel better, and the symptoms go down dramatically, but then there's a period of convalescence, and that is generally when you feel fine, but maybe you're just a little bit tired. You'll see that the organisms are still in place. The chain of infection requires a pathogen or some sort of infectious agent, which is passed from one organism to another. And here we'll see an example of a community that is, if we look at three different groups of individuals, and this community is in the center, that there's with a white circle indicating individuals who are sick. You'll see that an epidemic is when a large number of people in a community or an area are sick, and a pandemic is when that illness goes and moves out to other communities or moves out to the broader area. The chain of infection is really the key to how we can stay healthy. And you'll see that there are six links. One is the organism, and that's at the top. The source are the people around, are the individuals who are sick. Exit is how that organism is shared or exits the body. It can be either by a sneeze or a cough. The means of transmission might be an airborne, might you sneeze and that organism can go through the air and you can inhale it. It can be direct contact through a glass, depending on what the organism is. You need to have some way of that organism entering the next individual, so that maybe through the mucous membranes, the respiratory tract, broken skin. And then you have the new host, or the host, and that is the individual who is now going to get sick. So you'll see that there are these links that can be broken. So when the infectious agent, one thing that you can do to eliminate the infectious agent is to not provide a place where that agent can survive. So in the summertime, you want to keep all of your water, standing water, uh, dump it out, because you'll have mosquitoes that will breed in that water. And if you get, mosquitoes will carry certain diseases. So we want to decrease the number of mosquitoes, for example. The source, if we have sanitation, disinfection. So after you are done in an area, wipe down that area, wipe down that table. That's a way of eradicating that. Making sure that you cover your mouth when you sneeze. That's that exit. Blow your nose in a tissue. That's the exit. That's going to help. Washing your hands frequently, using hand sanitizer. The means of transmission, this is isolation. We incorrectly call it quarantining, but when we are identified as being COVID positive, we need to isolate and practice staying away from individuals so you're not moving or providing a means of transmission to another individual. The portal of entry is making sure that you have good hygiene. You again wash your hands frequently, that you are not putting your hands on your face. And a susceptible host is making all attempts to stay healthy, eat well, sleep well, and get the appropriate immunizations. When we have an immune response, we have an orchestra of cells that are involved. We have an antigen, which is referred to the foreign body, and our body makes antibodies in response. The types of immune cells that are involved are going to initially be these T cells. And the T cells, there are three basic kinds: a helper, a killer, and a suppressor. They each have a different role and come into play at different times. So when that immune response happens, the first step is that the little yellow pill in the center is our foreign antigen. It could be a virus, it could be a bacteria, and you'll see that there are some letter Y's on there. That's the antibodies. But this cell, which used to be just a regular old blood cell, becomes a macrophage, and it recognizes that foreign antigen and eats it up. That macrophage gets that foreign antigen, chops it up. You'll see here it comes in at the top. It breaks it down inside the cell, and it carries it out to the surface of the cell. And you'll see there is our T cell right there on binding onto that cell surface of that macrophage. And it is activated. It turns on and it gets activated so it can do its helper job. Those helper cells, T helper cells, they multiply really, really rapidly, and they do two things. They trigger the killer Ts, and then they also trigger the B cells, which is another branch of the immune system. They turn on those killer cells, and you'll see on the bottom that killer cell is attacking that target, that target infected cell. So the killer cells, they destroy those infected cells, and they turn on the inflammatory response. That's when the area gets red, inflamed, and sore. And it stimulates the B cells. And the B cells are what is our memory, part of our memory system. So we don't, once we're exposed to either a chickenpox vaccination or we've been ill with the chicken pox, the B cells are what remember what that chicken pox antigen looks like, and it responds very, very quickly if we get exposed again at a later date. So what it basically looks like is this macrophage or phagocyte eats that uh, antigen that gets chomped on and put on the surface of its cell on its cell surface. A T helper cell sees that beacon, it attaches, and it activates, and it tells or alerts the rest of the immune system to get active. So here's what that helper cell does is it activates, remember, those killer cells, and the killer cell will kill virally infected cells, bacterium infected cells, and also cancer cells. And these killer T cells are what really help with chronic disease, with cancer, with stopping cancer. And here is that T helper cell in the center. It is already activated. And here you'll see a B cell is recognizing that there's an antigen on board. And it makes that B cell then divides and produces this memory cell. And the memory cell is what says, aha, I know what the chickenpox virus looks like. I will not let that make this human being sick again. The plasma cell makes all the antibodies, and the antibodies are spewed out into the bloodstream, searching specifically for the virus or the bacteria that has invaded the person. And then you have the ability for once those antigens are identified, then they're crushed, killed, and destroyed. Once the immune system has that response under control, then another T cell, known as the suppressor T cells, will turn down that immune system. And it's a brake pedal. And without that brake pedal, then the immune response is out of control. And this is where you might have issues with diseases that have autoimmune type diseases, and that would be, say, multiple sclerosis or some rheumatoid arthritis, for example. So the bottom line is that in this immune system response, and this is acquired because you've been exposed, you can be exposed by, if we're looking at that chain, you can be a susceptible host. And the T cells are monitors. These are all our lymphocytes. Our T cells are monitoring. We have helper cells, which help to amplify or turn on the immune response. We have killer T cells, which are there to kill infected or foreign cells. And we have suppressor T cells, which get the immune system back under control. Once the threat has been handled, it's the brakes. And finally, the B cells are the ones that produce the antibodies. Those are important for being able to respond quickly, and also helps to spread and to mark those tissues, or those cells that are infected. And here is a quick summary. You'll see the antigen in the center. We have an infected cell, which means that antigen has gotten into a cell. And we look down the hill, we'll see that's where the T cells are going to be involved. We have the macrophage also activated